Everybody good? Okay. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be acceptable to you, O God, my rock and my redeemer. Psalm 37, 4 and 5. Take delight in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. Commit your way to the Lord. Trust in him, and he will act. 1 Samuel 12:24. But be sure to fear the Lord and serve him faithfully with all your heart. Consider what a great thing he has done for you. In the reading about Hannah and Elkanah and Peninnah, twice we're told, if you caught it, twice we're told that God had closed Hannah's womb. Twice. We're told this, just in case we missed it the first time. Twice we're told that the first wife was picking on her because she couldn't bear children. Twice we're told that. God loves these impossible situations. Water into wine, younger sons chosen over the older sons. Jesse's runt, David, chosen over 7 other sons to be king. Poor being made rich, rich being brought low. God strives in these situations. Our faith is strengthened in these situations. Altars that were covered with water and then fired in front of the prophets of Baal. Impossible situations reversed. God told Hannah twice that her womb is closed up. Now, who believed it? Elkanah believed it. The other wife believed it. Did Hannah believe it? This is the will of God for her. Your womb has been closed. But Hannah, stubborn, crazy, foolish Hannah, refused to believe that. And what does she do? She prays. She continued to pray. She prayed in front of all of the evidence to the contrary that this is what she understands to be God's will for her, despite whoever it was that told her that God's will is to have the womb closed. These reversals, God loves. And it seems to me also that God loves this dickering back and forth. Remember the story of Sodom and Gomorrah. Abraham pled for Sodom not to be destroyed. Well, how about for 100? Would you destroy for 100? Well, as he thought about it, well, how about 50? How about 30? And they negotiate back and forth. God loves it when we wrestle, when we struggle with our faith. Who would you have blessed the son with? The other wife or Hannah? Hannah. That's the right answer, by the way. Hannah. The story is set in the time of Judges. This is the time right before Kings. Samuel would anoint Saul and David as the kings of Israel. Samuel, the one that was born to Hannah. Eli had 2 sons, and they were involved in some pretty shady practices when it came to their religion. They would take the meat that was meant for sacrifice, they would rob the houses. They were not acting as they should, and Eli couldn't control them, apparently, or didn't have the wherewithal to do it. And how is that for a prophet of God who is at Shiloh, and that's where the Ark of the Covenant is at this time, is in Shiloh? How is it that a prophet of God could mistake somebody praying for drunk? Very strange, isn't it? But even the old guy could offer blessing, even if he got part of it wrong. So what's the future for Hannah? Who holds the future? Who holds all futures possible? There's a future that's being presented to Hannah. You will not have any children. You're going to have to put up with Peniel putting you down for the rest of your life. Who holds all futures possible? Who is it that can determine how to bring water from a rock, can part seas? Who is it that can raise people from the dead? Who is it that loves you enough that when you pour your heart out to God, God will respond as God did in Hannah's case? That is a God that is love. That is a God that is of compassion. And this God just loves it when we respond to God's love. And in her song, she talks about the rich being made low and the reversals that come. That is the way God works. Who is it that holds all futures possible? And in the face of all the evidence, this stubborn, crazy woman images faithful living to us. Are you crazy enough to pray against all evidence? Are you crazy enough to pray during a loss of job? Crazy enough to pray when you're homeless? Crazy enough to pray when the diagnosis isn't great? Crazy enough to pray children die? Parents. This is a God that loves to bless us. And what is Hannah's response to her blessing? She dedicated her son to God. She held him for a few years and then turned him in to be a Nazirite. That's where they don't shave their hair, they don't shave their head. And Samuel was brought into Eli's home. And Eli was faithful enough when it finally dawned on him that Samuel was going to be the prophet instead of Eli or his sons, that he was grace-filled and allowed Samuel to continue his ministry. In the face of terror that we had over the weekend. Mark speaks of the end times. Mark 13 is his apocalypse. And if you read it, what is Mark has Jesus saying, the angels don't know the day. I don't know the day. Only God knows the day. We have a lot of people that do a lot of funny math to come up with dates and years, and that happens all the time. Something happens and somebody else is spinning out the numbers. Invest with me, and whatever it is, whatever they do. And Jesus says, your first response, and he says this later on in Mark, your first response is to share the good news of the gospel. In the face of these hard times, questioning times, tough times, he says your first response is to share the gospel. Make your defense before judges and before tribunals and all that. He says, the Lord will give you what to say. Your first response is to share the good news. It isn't to hunker down. It isn't to separate ourselves. It isn't to start throwing dates around and then setting up boundaries between who's in and who's out. It's to share the good news of the gospel. That's from Mark. That's good advice. How do we do that? How do we share the good news of the gospel? What has God done in your life? God is a God who loves reversals. He loves it when we're crazy enough to pray when things don't look good. Folks, I was supposed to be dead 2.5 months ago. That's what I was told. That was my future. God had other ideas. Amen. Wish he'd clue me in on what some of them are. God had other ideas that I didn't want to make it that personal, but that is the God I understand. This is a God that holds all futures possible. And I like what Shirley had to say. Pray until something happens. Pray, even though I wasn't here, Shirley, I did hear about it. Pray until something happens. When you're up against the wall, pray through it. God in love is waiting on the other side. Amen.